Investigators have coordinates. Specific cell tower coordinates that trace a phone's location to a remote area in the Arizona desert. And on day 30 of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, search teams went to that location looking for a body. Not searching broadly across the Catalina foothills where Nancy lived. Not canvassing neighborhoods or checking nearby parks or following up on general tips about possible sightings, but traveling to a specific set of coordinates in desert terrain outside the immediate area, to a location that cell tower data or other technological tracking indicated might be significant, might be relevant, might be where someone connected to this case went in the hours or days after Nancy disappeared from her home on February 1, 2026. Ashleigh Banfield reported on March 2, 30 days after Nancy vanished, that investigators had searched this desert location based on coordinate information. Banfield is a veteran television journalist with decades of experience covering major crime stories for major networks. Her program Drop Dead Serious focuses on in-depth serious analysis of criminal cases rather than speculation or sensationalism. The fact that she reported this development with those specific details, cell tower coordinates leading to desert searches, means the information came from credible sources with knowledge of the investigation. Likely law enforcement sources who provided information to media either through official channels or through background briefings that allowed reporting without attribution. The search represents a significant shift in the nature of this investigation. A shift from the intensive neighborhood canvassing and crime scene evidence collection that dominated the first weeks after Nancy disappeared, to targeted searches in specific remote locations identified through technological means like cell tower data analysis. A shift from gathering evidence at the places we know Nancy was, her home and her neighborhood, to following leads that take investigators into remote desert terrain that may be where someone took Nancy, or where evidence related to her disappearance may be located. Cell tower coordinates work through a process called triangulation. When a phone communicates with cellular towers, which it does constantly even when not being actively used for calls or data, multiple towers detect the signal that the phone transmits. The strength of the signal at each tower and the precise timing of the communications allow calculation of the phone's approximate position through mathematical analysis. The more towers that detect the signal, the more precise the location calculation becomes. 2 towers create a line between them, and the phone is somewhere along that line. 3 towers create a triangle with the phone somewhere inside that triangle. 4 or more towers narrow the position further through intersection of multiple geometric calculations. And when investigators obtain cell tower records through proper legal subpoenas served on cellular carriers compelling them to produce logs showing which phones connected to which towers at which times, those records show not just that a phone was in a general area like Tucson, but can provide coordinates precise enough to guide search teams to specific locations, even in remote terrain miles from the nearest roads or structures. The fact that investigators focused search efforts on a specific desert location 30 days into the case suggests several things about the state of the investigation. It suggests they have identified a phone of interest, meaning a phone that they believe belongs to a suspect or person of interest or someone connected to the case in some way. It suggests they obtained records showing that phone's location at a critical time, likely in the hours after Nancy disappeared, when someone who took her might have been transporting her or disposing of evidence. It suggests they analyzed that data and determined that the coordinates where that phone was located warrant physical search with personnel and equipment. And it suggests they believe the search is important enough to devote resources to it, even though searching remote desert terrain is difficult, time-consuming, and resource-intensive. Dr. Tracy Sargent, a forensic criminologist and missing persons specialist with a PhD in psychology emphasizing criminal justice, appeared with Ashleigh Banfield to analyze the search and explain what it means from an investigative and behavioral perspective. Dr. Sargent specializes in missing persons cases, behavioral analysis, criminal profiling, and victimology. She works as a forensic criminologist, crime scene analyst, law enforcement officer, canine handler, and public safety trainer. Her expertise spans both the psychological aspects of criminal behavior, understanding how perpetrators think and make decisions, and the practical operational aspects of conducting searches and investigations, understanding how search teams work and what they look for and how they determine where to search. That combination of psychological insight and operational experience makes her analysis particularly valuable for understanding what the Day 30 desert search indicates about this case. If you want to understand how cell tower coordinate technology actually works in missing persons investigations, how investigators use triangulation and signal analysis to identify locations worth searching, what the process looks like when subpoenas get served on cellular carriers and data gets analyzed and coordinates get generated, what high probability areas mean in the context of search operations and how those get identified through behavioral analysis and geographic profiling and evidence analysis, why search teams start at ground zero, where the victim was last seen, and work outward in systematic patterns rather than jumping immediately to random remote locations, what it signifies when investigators shift resources from broad neighborhood searches to targeted searches in specific remote locations identified through technology, what the challenges are of searching vast desert terrain and how teams approach that methodically, and what Dr. Tracy Sargent's expert analysis tells us about the significance of this Day 30 desert search in Nancy's case and what it might indicate about what investigators believe happened and where the investigation stands. Then subscribe to True Crime Vault right now. This channel provides detailed breakdowns of real investigative techniques based on credible reporting from established journalists like Ashleigh Banfield and expert analysis from professionals like Dr. Sargent who understand how these cases actually work. Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications because this case continues to develop with search operations and investigative work ongoing. And when significant developments occur, when search results get announced, or when other evidence emerges, you want to understand what they mean and how they fit into the broader investigation and what they tell us about how close investigators are to identifying who took Nancy. Hit the like button as well because comprehensive analysis of search methodology and technological tracking deserves to reach everyone following this case and everyone interested in understanding how modern investigations use technology to guide search efforts and how the combination of behavioral analysis and hard data creates effective search strategies. And comment below telling us your thoughts on what the desert search on Day 30 indicates about where the investigation stands. Does this mean investigators have identified a suspect? Does it mean they are following specific leads from tips or witnesses? What do coordinates showing a phone in remote desert areas tell us about what happened to Nancy? Now let us examine exactly what Ashleigh Banfield reported, what cell tower coordinate technology can and cannot tell investigators, how search operations work when teams have specific coordinates to investigate, and what expert analysis from Dr. Tracy Sargent reveals about the significance of this development. On March 2, 2026, 30 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her Tucson home on February 1st, Ashleigh Banfield reported on her program, Drop Dead Serious, that investigators had searched a specific set of cell tower coordinates in the Arizona desert looking for a body. The phrasing of that report is important and worth examining carefully. Specific set of coordinates means not a general area, but a defined location identified precisely enough through technological analysis that search teams could be directed to it. Cell tower coordinates means the location was derived from analysis of cellular network data showing where a phone of interest had been. Arizona desert means terrain outside urban or suburban areas, likely in one of the vast remote desert regions that surround Tucson in all directions. And looking for a body means the search was focused on recovery, on finding Nancy's remains if she was brought to that location, rather than on looking for a living person hiding or held captive in that area. Banfield is a veteran television journalist who has covered major crime stories for Court TV, MSNBC, CNN, and now News Nation. Her reporting style emphasizes facts and expert analysis rather than speculation. She does not report developments unless she has confidence in her sources. The fact that she reported this Day 30 desert search with those specific details means her sources, likely within law enforcement or close to the investigation, provided information that she assessed as credible enough to report to her substantial audience. Her program on this topic drew over 450,000 views, indicating significant public interest in any developments related to Nancy's case. The key details from Banfield's March 2nd report that we need to understand and analyze are these. First, the search was based on cell tower coordinates derived from technological analysis of phone location data. Not witness tips saying maybe check this general area, not behavioral analysis suggesting perpetrators might use desert locations, but hard data from cellular network systems showing that a specific phone was at specific coordinates at a specific time. Second, The location was in the Arizona desert, which suggests remote terrain significantly outside the Tucson metro area where Nancy lived, likely in areas with minimal population and difficult access. Third, the search was explicitly described as looking for a body, which indicates investigators believe Nancy is deceased and that her remains may have been transported to this remote location for concealment. And fourth, this occurred on day 30, a full month after Nancy disappeared, which means this was not part of the immediate search efforts in the first days after her disappearance when searches focused on the immediate area around her home, but represents a later stage of investigation following specific leads developed through technological evidence analysis over the preceding weeks. Ashleigh Banfield brought Dr. Tracy Sargent onto the program specifically to provide expert analysis of what this search development means from both a behavioral and operational perspective. Dr. Sargent's credentials are extensive and directly relevant. She holds a PhD in psychology with an emphasis in criminal justice, meaning her academic training focused on understanding criminal behavior and the justice system response. She specializes in missing persons cases, which means she understands the specific challenges and methodologies involved in searching for people who have disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Her work includes behavioral analysis, the study of how perpetrators think and act and make decisions, criminal profiling, the process of developing descriptions of likely offender characteristics based on crime scene evidence and patterns, and victimology, the study of victims and their circumstances to understand why they were targeted and what happened to them. Beyond her academic credentials, Dr. Sargent has extensive practical operational experience. She works as a forensic criminologist analyzing crime scenes and evidence, as a crime scene analyst processing scenes for evidence, as a law enforcement officer with direct investigative authority and experience, as a canine handler training and working with dogs used in searches, and as a public safety trainer teaching others how to conduct investigations and searches effectively. That combination means she understands not just the theory, but the practice. She knows what actually happens in the field when search teams go into desert terrain following coordinates. She knows what challenges they face, she knows what they look for, and she knows what it means when investigators make decisions about where to search and how to allocate resources. Dr. Sargent explained several key concepts during her appearance with Banfield that are essential for understanding what the Day 30 desert search indicates. She discussed what high-probability areas mean in real search operations and how those areas get identified through multiple streams of analysis. She explained why search teams start at ground zero, the location where the victim was last seen or where the crime occurred, and why they work outward from there in systematic expanding patterns rather than immediately jumping to remote locations. And she analyzed what it can indicate when law enforcement narrows focus to a specific location in remote desert terrain, rather than continuing broad searches in multiple areas simultaneously. What that focused searching tells us about what evidence investigators have and what theories they are working. Let me break down each of these concepts in substantial detail because understanding search methodology and the reasoning behind search decisions is essential to understanding what the Day 30 development means for Nancy's case and what it tells us about the investigation. High-probability areas in missing persons searches are locations that analysis suggests have a higher likelihood of being relevant to the case than other locations. These are not random areas selected arbitrarily. They are not places that just seem like they might be worth checking. They are areas identified through rigorous analysis using multiple methods and multiple sources of information. Understanding what makes an area high probability requires understanding the different types of analysis that contribute to that determination. Behavioral analysis examines what perpetrators typically do in similar cases based on patterns observed across hundreds or thousands of previous crimes. If someone abducts a person from an urban or suburban location, behavioral patterns from previous cases show that perpetrators often transport victims to remote locations where discovery is less likely and where the perpetrator can spend time without being observed or interrupted. Desert areas, forested areas, rural farmland, industrial sites, all represent location types that appear repeatedly in cases where victims are transported from populated areas. Behavioral analysts study these patterns and use them to suggest areas worth searching when similar crimes occur. Geographic profiling analyzes the relationship between crime locations and offender locations based on research showing that perpetrators tend to operate in areas they know. Most criminals do not travel far from their homes or regular activity spaces to commit crimes. They operate in familiar areas where they know the roads and terrain and patterns of activity. Geographic profiling uses the location of the crime to suggest areas where the perpetrator likely lives or works or regularly spends time, and those areas become high probability for finding evidence because perpetrators often return to familiar territory when they need to dispose of evidence or conceal victims. Victimology analyzes the victim's life, relationships, routine, and circumstances to understand why they were targeted and what the perpetrator's connection to them might be. In Nancy's case, victimology would examine her routine, who knew her schedule, who had access to her home, what her relationships were, whether there were any conflicts or problems or people who might have motive. That analysis can suggest suspects or categories of suspects. And once you have suspect ideas, you can analyze their connection to various locations to determine where they might have taken evidence. Technological data provides the most specific and reliable identification of high-probability areas when it is available. Cell tower data showing where a suspect's phone, or a victim's phone, or any phone of interest was located in the hours after a crime, provides concrete information about where to search rather than relying on behavioral patterns or geographic theories. GPS data from vehicles. If such data can be obtained through legal process, provides even more precise location information. Automatic license plate reader captures showing which vehicles traveled. Which routes create data trails showing movement patterns. All of this technological evidence can point investigators to specific locations that warrant search based not on theories or patterns, but on hard data showing that someone or something connected to the case was at that location at a relevant time. The search operation that Ashleigh Banfield reported on day 30 appears to be based primarily or entirely on technological data, specifically cell tower coordinates. That means investigators have identified a phone that they assess as relevant to Nancy's case. That phone could belong to several categories of people. It could belong to a suspect that investigators have identified through convergence of other evidence like DNA or digital forensics or witness information, and checking that suspect's phone records show desert location at critical times. It could belong to someone who is not definitively a suspect but is a person of interest, someone connected to the case in some way that makes their movements relevant. It could belong to someone who provided information through the tip line that led investigators to check phone records for that area and time. What we can determine is that some phone that investigators deemed significant showed up on cell tower records at coordinates in the Arizona desert at a time that investigators assessed as potentially relevant to Nancy's case. And that data was specific enough, credible enough, and compelling enough that investigators devoted resources to physically searching that location, even though searching remote desert terrain requires significant personnel, equipment, time, and expense. That decision to search tells us investigators believe the coordinates are worth investigating. They are not chasing random possibilities. They have information pointing them to that specific area. Now let me explain in much more detail how cell tower coordinate technology works and what level of precision it can provide and what its limitations are. Because understanding the technology is important for assessing what this Day 30 search means and what investigators can learn from cell tower data and what they cannot learn. Cell phones maintain constant communication with cellular network infrastructure, even when the phone is not being actively used for calls or data transmission. This constant communication is necessary for the phone to remain connected to the network, so that calls and messages can reach it instantly when someone tries to contact it. When you move through an area carrying your phone, the phone continuously evaluates signal strength from all nearby towers that it can detect. It measures how strong the signal is from each tower, and it connects to whichever tower provides the strongest, clearest signal at that moment. As you move and as signal strengths change because you are getting closer to some towers and farther from others, your phone seamlessly hands off from tower to tower, maintaining connectivity without you noticing any interruption. You might drive across a city and your phone might hand off between dozens of different towers as you move through their coverage areas. All of these communications, every connection to a tower and every handoff from one tower to another, get logged automatically in the cellular carrier's network management systems. These logs are created and maintained for technical operational reasons. They help carriers manage network traffic and balance loads across towers. They support billing systems that track usage. They enable troubleshooting when customers report problems with service. The logs are not created for law enforcement purposes, but they exist, and they create a detailed record of which phones connected to which towers at which times. When investigators in a criminal case believe that phone location data might be relevant, they prepare legal subpoenas requesting cell tower records for specific phones during specific timeframes. Those subpoenas, approved by judges and served on cellular carriers through formal legal process, compel the carriers to search their network logs and produce records showing the connections and handoffs for the requested phones during the requested times. The carriers are legally required to comply and to produce whatever records exist. The records that carriers produce in response to subpoenas contain multiple types of information. They show the phone number or device identifier of the phone being tracked. They show timestamps for every connection and handoff, typically precise to the second. They show the tower identifier for every tower the phone connected to, which allows investigators to determine the physical location of each tower. They show signal strength measurements indicating how strong the connection was between the phone and each tower. And in some cases, they include additional technical data about connection duration, data usage, or other network activity that can provide context. Investigators analyzing these records can trace a phone's movement through an area by mapping out which towers it connected to over time. If a phone connected to Tower A at 2:00 p.m., then Tower B at 2:15 p.m., then Tower C at 2:30 p.m., investigators can see the phone moving from Tower A's coverage area toward Tower B and then toward Tower C. That creates a trail showing the general path of movement. But the precision of location determination from cell tower data has significant limitations that are important to understand. Tower coverage areas in urban environments where towers are closely spaced might be relatively small, perhaps covering a few city blocks. In those dense network areas, knowing which tower a phone connected to narrows location to a fairly small area. But in rural or desert areas where towers are widely spaced because there are fewer subscribers and less demand for dense coverage, a single tower might cover an area of several square miles or more. Knowing that a phone connected to a rural tower tells you the phone was somewhere within that multi-mile coverage area, but does not tell you exactly where within that area. Signal strength measurements help narrow location estimates. If a phone shows very strong signal to one particular tower and weak signal to other nearby towers, that suggests the phone is probably close to the strong signal tower. If a phone shows moderate signal to multiple towers, that suggests the phone is probably somewhere between those towers where coverage overlaps. Analysts can use signal strength data to estimate distance from towers and to narrow the probable location area. Triangulation using multiple towers provides the most precision possible from cell tower data. If 3 towers all detect a phone's signal simultaneously, analysts can use the signal strength at each tower or the timing of signal arrival at each tower to calculate the intersection of 3 coverage zones. That intersection creates a triangular area where the phone must be located. The size of that triangle depends on tower spacing and signal conditions. In optimal conditions with closely spaced towers, the triangle might be quite small, perhaps a few hundred feet across. In rural conditions with widely spaced towers, the triangle might span several miles. Modern cellular systems, including 4G, LTE, and 5G, provide somewhat better location data than older 2G or 3G systems because they use more precise timing measurements and more sophisticated network management techniques. But even with the best current technology, cell tower location in remote areas typically provides precision measured in hundreds of yards to several miles, rather than exact pinpoint coordinates like GPS provides. That means, when investigators search based on cell tower coordinates in desert terrain, they are realistically searching an area rather than a single specific point. The size of the search area depends entirely on the precision that the cell tower data provides in that specific location. If cell tower analysis places a phone within a 1-mile radius of a set of coordinates, meaning the phone was definitely within 1 mile of that center point but could have been anywhere within that circle, the search area is roughly 3 square miles of terrain. If precision is lower, placing the phone within a 3-mile radius, which is realistic for rural desert areas with widely spaced towers, the search area expands dramatically to roughly 28 square miles. Searching that much desert terrain thoroughly with the level of detail necessary to find remains or evidence requires enormous resources, substantial time, and large numbers of personnel working systematically. Subscribe to True Crime Vault if you have not already. Make sure notifications are turned on. Like this video so the algorithm shows it to more people. Visit our channel to watch all our previous comprehensive coverage of Nancy's case, and comment below with your analysis of what this Day 30 search means. Now let me continue explaining search methodology and what Dr. Sargent's expertise tells us about how these searches work. Dr. Tracy Sargent explained that search teams in missing persons cases always start at ground zero and work outward systematically rather than jumping randomly to distant locations. Ground zero is the location where the victim was last seen alive or where investigators have the highest confidence the crime occurred. In Nancy's case, ground zero is her home on Camino Escalante in the Catalina foothills. That is where she was last seen by her son-in-law Tommaso when he dropped her off at 9:48 p.m. on January 31st. That is where her garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. That is where the doorbell camera captured the masked suspect at 1:47 a.m. on February 1st. That is where the pacemaker app disconnected at 2:28 a.m. indicating Nancy was no longer in proximity to her phone. Ground zero for Nancy's case is definitively her home. The initial searches in any missing persons case focus intensively on ground zero and the immediate surrounding area. Nancy's property was searched extensively multiple times by investigators looking for evidence, for signs of struggle, for anything that might tell the story of what happened. The house interior was processed as a crime scene. The yard was searched. Outbuildings, if any, were searched. Every location on the property was examined systematically. From ground zero, searches expand outward in concentric zones. The immediate neighborhood was canvassed in the first days. Investigators knocked on doors asking residents if they saw or heard anything unusual. They requested security camera footage from every home that had cameras. They searched areas within walking distance in case Nancy had somehow left on foot or been taken on foot initially before being moved by vehicle. Parks, vacant lots, drainage areas, anywhere in the immediate vicinity that could potentially be relevant was checked. As those immediate area searches were completed without finding Nancy or producing immediate leads about what happened to her, searches expanded further. Areas identified through witness tips got searched. If someone called the tip line saying they thought they saw something suspicious at a particular location, investigators followed up by searching that location. Areas identified through evidence analysis got searched. The back road on Camino Real, where a neighbor's camera captured 12 vehicles including the possible Kia Soul, became relevant, and that area was examined. Other areas identified through various investigative threads were checked systematically. This outward expansion from ground zero is standard methodology because most missing persons cases get resolved relatively close to where the person disappeared. Many cases involve victims who are found deceased on their own property or very close by. Many involve victims who are found within a few miles of ground zero. Expanding outward systematically ensures that likely areas get searched before investigators spend resources on less likely distant locations. But the Day 30 search in the Arizona desert based on cell tower coordinates represents a different category. This is not expansion from ground zero based on proximity. This is a targeted search at a specific remote location identified through technological evidence showing that someone or something connected to the case was at that location. That type of search happens when investigators have information pointing them beyond the areas that proximity-based searching would cover. It happens when data provides coordinates that warrant investigation, even though they are far from ground zero. Dr. Sargent emphasized that when law enforcement narrows focus to a specific remote location and commits resources to searching it, that decision indicates they have information they assess as credible and significant. Searches are not conducted casually. Remote desert searches are particularly resource-intensive. Getting personnel and equipment to remote locations requires logistics and planning. Searching rough terrain requires specialized training and often specialized equipment. Canine teams, if used, require handlers and support. The time commitment is substantial. Investigators do not conduct searches of that magnitude without reason. The fact that they searched this desert location on Day 30 means they have cell tower data or other information that they believe is strong enough to justify the effort and expense. What could that information be? Several scenarios are possible, and we can analyze each to understand what might have led to this search. First scenario. Investigators have identified a suspect through convergence of other evidence. DNA forensic genealogy may have produced candidates. Digital forensics analyzing Google search records may have identified someone who searched for Nancy's address repeatedly over months. Camera analysis may have identified vehicles or individuals. Retail tracking may have connected someone to the Ozark Trail backpack purchase. Some combination of those independent evidence streams may have converged on a specific individual who investigators assess as a primary suspect. Having identified that suspect, investigators obtained cell tower records for that person's phone through subpoena to the cellular carrier. Those records showed the phone's location continuously through the relevant time frame. Analysis of those records showed that on February 1st, in the hours after 2:28 a.m., when Nancy's pacemaker app disconnected, the suspect's phone traveled from the Tucson area to specific coordinates in remote desert terrain. The phone remained at or near those coordinates for some period of time, perhaps an hour or more, before returning toward populated areas. That pattern of traveling to a remote location, remaining there for a significant period, and returning is exactly what you would expect if someone was transporting remains to a remote area for concealment and disposal. Investigators analyzing that pattern determined that the coordinates where the phone spent time warranted physical search. Even though 30 days have passed, even though environmental factors may have degraded evidence, the data pointing to that specific location was compelling enough that search was deemed necessary. That is scenario 1, and it is perhaps the most likely explanation for a coordinate-based desert search because it represents investigators following convergence of multiple evidence streams to identify a suspect and then using phone data for that identified suspect to determine where to search. Second scenario, investigators have not definitively identified a suspect, but they have a person of interest, someone connected to the case in some way that makes their movements relevant. That person might be someone mentioned by witnesses, someone who knew Nancy, someone whose name appeared in her contacts or communications, someone who had reason to be in her neighborhood. That person is not charged or arrested, but investigators want to know more about them. They obtained cell tower records for that person's phone. Those records showed desert location at relevant times. Investigators are searching to see if that location is significant or if the person's presence there was coincidental and unrelated. Third scenario, someone provided information to investigators through the tip line or through other communication. Perhaps that person claimed to have seen something or heard something about a location in the desert being relevant. Investigators checked cell tower records for phones in that area during relevant time frames to see if any phones of interest were there. They found a phone that appears connected to the case based on other information they have about that phone or its owner. Now they are searching the location to verify whether the tip was accurate and whether it leads to Nancy or to evidence. Fourth scenario, investigators conducted broader analysis of all phones that were near Nancy's home on February 1st during the relevant time frame. Cell tower records can be obtained not just for specific phones, but for all phones that connected to specific towers during specific times. Investigators may have requested from carriers records of all phones that connected to towers covering Nancy's neighborhood between midnight and 6 a.m. on February 1st. That would produce a list of phone numbers that were in the area during the critical window. Analysts then filtered that list to eliminate phones belonging to known residents who would have innocent reasons to be in the area. Any phones remaining after that filtering, phones that were in Nancy's neighborhood during the crime window but that do not belong to residents, become interesting. Investigators can trace those phones through cell records to see where they went after leaving Nancy's area. If one of those phones traveled to remote desert coordinates shortly after being near Nancy's home, that creates a suspicious pattern worth investigating. The search is following that phone's trail to see if the location it went to is relevant. We cannot determine from outside the investigation which scenario or which combination of scenarios led to the Day 30 desert search. But all of them share the common fundamental element that technological data, cell tower records showing a phone of interest at specific coordinates, pointed investigators to that location. The search is not random. It is not based on guessing or hoping. It is following digital evidence in the form of data showing that something connected to this case, a phone that investigators have reason to care about, was at those coordinates at a time that might be relevant. True Crime Vault provides ongoing comprehensive coverage of major investigations with detailed analysis of evidence and methodology. Subscribe now, turn on all notifications, like this video, visit our channel for more, comment with your thoughts. And if you have any information about Nancy's disappearance, particularly any knowledge of vehicles or people in remote desert areas on February 1st or in the days immediately after, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or Pima County Sheriff at 520-351-4900. The rewards totaling $1.2 million remain available for information that helps find Nancy or leads to arrest and conviction of those responsible. Now let me discuss what the results or lack of announced results from this Day 30 search might indicate. Ashleigh Banfield's report on March the 2nd covered the fact that the search occurred and explained the methodology and significance based on Dr. Sargent's expert analysis. But the report did not announce any findings or results from the search. That absence of announced results could mean several things. First, nothing of significance was found during the search, and investigators are continuing to work other leads and pursue other investigative avenues. Searches do not always produce results even when the reasoning behind them is sound and the data leading to them appears strong. Evidence might have been removed. Environmental factors might have degraded or destroyed remains or evidence. The location precision from cell tower data might not have been sufficient to identify the exact spot within the search area where evidence exists. Any of those factors could result in a search that was justified and properly conducted, but that did not locate what investigators were looking for. Second, something was found, but results are being withheld from public announcement, pending further investigation or forensic analysis. If remains were found, definitive identification through DNA comparison or other means would be necessary before any announcement could be made to the family or public. That process takes time. If evidence was found that appears relevant but requires laboratory analysis to determine its significance, that analysis would be completed before any announcement. Investigators in high-profile cases are cautious about announcing findings prematurely because premature announcements can create problems if the information turns out to be wrong, or if the announcement affects the investigation negatively, or if it causes unnecessary distress to families. Third, the search could still be ongoing as of March 2nd or could have continued beyond that date. Thorough searching of large areas of remote terrain takes substantial time. A team might search for multiple days before completing coverage of the area that cell tower precision indicates is relevant. If the search was not yet complete when Banfield reported on March 2nd, results would not yet be available to report. Fourth, the search might have produced information that investigators are using to develop additional leads, but that does not constitute a definitive finding worth announcing. Perhaps the search confirmed that someone had been at that location based on tire tracks or footprints or other signs of activity, but did not locate remains or direct evidence. That confirmation that the location is relevant might lead investigators to expand the search area or to focus on identifying who was there, but would not produce immediate results to announce. We simply do not know which of these possibilities or which combination explains the absence of announced results. What we know is that the search occurred, that it was based on solid technological evidence in the form of cell tower coordinates, that it represents investigators following specific leads rather than searching randomly, and that the investigation continues actively with multiple threads being pursued simultaneously. Dr. Sargent's analysis included discussion of the significant challenges that searches in remote desert terrain face and why those challenges make thorough searching difficult even with good coordinate data. Desert areas in Arizona and throughout the Southwest are vast. The terrain is varied with vegetation, rocks, ravines, washes, hills, and countless features that create places where evidence or remains could be concealed. Weather affects evidence over time. 30 days in desert conditions with daytime temperatures that can be extremely high and nighttime temperatures that can drop significantly creates harsh environmental conditions. Decomposition and heat accelerates rapidly. Scavengers, including coyotes, birds, and insects, disturb remains. Wind scatters light evidence. Rain, when it occurs, can wash evidence away or bury it. All of these factors make searches difficult and make it possible for searches to miss evidence even when searching the right general area. That is precisely why high-probability areas identified through technological data like cell tower coordinates are so valuable, despite the limitations. They allow investigators to focus limited resources on specific locations where data indicates something relevant occurred, rather than trying to search thousands of square miles of empty desert without any idea where to focus. Even if the precision is not perfect, narrowing the search area from the entire Arizona desert to a few square miles around specific coordinates makes the search feasible where it otherwise would not be. Search teams conducting these operations use systematic methods designed to maximize the probability of finding evidence if it exists in the search area. Teams typically divide large areas into grids, creating a map of the area with sections that can be searched individually and systematically. Each section gets searched thoroughly before teams move to the next section. This ensures complete coverage without missing areas. Searchers often walk in parallel lines across each grid section, maintaining constant spacing so that the areas between searchers do not exceed the distance at which evidence could be visually detected. Cadaver dogs, which are specially trained canines that can detect human remains through their extraordinarily sensitive sense of smell, are invaluable in searches. Dogs can detect remains that visual searches would miss because they are buried or concealed or degraded beyond easy visual recognition. Handlers work dogs through search areas systematically, allowing the dogs to detect scent cones and alert handlers to locations that warrant closer examination. Dr. Sargent's expertise includes canine handling, so her analysis would have incorporated understanding of how dogs are used in these searches and what their capabilities and limitations are. Ground-penetrating radar is sometimes used in searches where investigators suspect remains may be buried. GPR uses radio waves that penetrate soil and reflect back from objects or disturbances underground. The technology can identify areas where soil has been disturbed by digging, can detect objects buried beneath the surface, and can distinguish between natural geological features and anomalies that might indicate buried evidence. GPR is not always used because it requires specialized equipment and trained operators, but in high-priority cases like Nancy's where resources are available, it may be deployed. Drones with cameras and sometimes with thermal imaging capability can survey large areas rapidly from the air. Aerial perspective allows identification of features or anomalies that might not be apparent from ground level. Disturbed soil, vegetation patterns, access routes, all can be visible from above. Thermal imaging can detect temperature differences that might indicate recent activity or concealed objects. Drones do not replace ground searching, but they can guide ground teams to areas that warrant close examination. All of these tools and techniques may have been employed in the Day 30 desert search. We do not know the specific methods used because that operational information has not been released publicly. But major searches in high-profile cases typically use every available resource to maximize the probability of finding evidence if it exists in the search area. The decision to search is based on data. The execution of the search is based on professional expertise and systematic methodology, and the results, whatever they may be, inform the continuing investigation. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 30 days as of March 2nd when Banfield reported this development. 30 days without resolution, 30 days without answers for her family. 30 days of intensive investigative work pursuing every available lead, analyzing every piece of evidence, following every technological trail that might lead to Nancy or to identification of who took her. The Day 30 desert search based on cell tower coordinates is part of that ongoing work. It represents one thread among many that investigators are pulling, whether it produces results that break the case or whether it eliminates one possibility so that resources can focus elsewhere. It is the kind of methodical, evidence-driven work that solves complex cases. Other investigative work continues simultaneously in parallel with the desert search. DNA forensic genealogy, building family trees, and identifying candidates based on genetic matches to the DNA in the glove found near Nancy's home. Digital forensics analyzing Google search records if subpoenas have been obtained, showing who searched for Nancy's address over the months before she disappeared. Camera footage enhancement and analysis identifying vehicles captured throughout the Catalina foothills during relevant time frames. Retail transaction tracking connecting purchases of the Ozark Trail backpack to specific individuals. Traditional detective work interviewing witnesses, following up on tips, conducting background investigations of persons of interest. All of these separate efforts by different specialists using different techniques are working toward the same goal. Eventually, if the case is to be solved, those separate threads must converge, Evidence from different independent sources must point to the same person. DNA candidates must overlap with digital forensic findings. Those must overlap with vehicle identifications from cameras. Those must overlap with cell tower data. That convergence, when multiple independent lines of investigation all arrive at the same name through completely different paths, is what creates the certainty necessary for arrest and prosecution. But convergence takes time. DNA genealogy can require months. Digital forensics requires proper legal process and analysis time. Camera work requires enhancement and correlation across hundreds of potential sources. The Day 30, a desert search may be related to convergence if investigators have identified a suspect through other means, and cell tower data for that suspect's phone show desert coordinates at relevant times, leading them to search that location. Or it may be an independent lead being pursued alongside other work without yet connecting to other evidence streams. We cannot determine which scenario applies from outside, but we know the search occurred based on credible reporting from Ashleigh Banfield. We know it was driven by cell tower coordinate data. We know it took investigators to remote desert terrain. And we know it represents systematic evidence-driven investigation rather than random searching. The investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance remains active and intensive. The Day 30 milestone represents a transition point from the immediate emergency response phase to the longer-term investigative phase where complex forensic work and systematic evidence analysis drive the case forward. The desert search is one manifestation of that phase. Investigators have data. They are following that data. They are searching where the evidence leads them. And whether that particular search produced results or not, the overall investigative effort continues with determination and purpose. True Crime Vault will continue providing comprehensive, detailed coverage of this case as developments occur and as information becomes available. We will continue explaining the real investigative techniques being used, the real challenges investigators face, and the real significance of developments like coordinate-based desert searches. Subscribe to this channel to stay informed with analysis that goes beyond surface-level reporting to explain what evidence really means and how investigations really work. Turn on all notifications so you are alerted immediately when we post coverage of new developments. Like this video to support this kind of detailed analytical content and to help it reach more people who want to understand these cases thoroughly. Visit our channel to watch all our previous videos covering every aspect of Nancy's disappearance, from the initial doorbell camera footage, through the DNA evidence, through the Google search analysis, through the vehicle identifications, through now this Day 30 desert search. And comment below with your analysis and your thoughts. What do you think the cell tower coordinates showing a phone in remote desert areas indicates? Do you think investigators have identified a suspect and are following that person's movements through phone records? Do you think this is a tip they are pursuing? Do you think they are analyzing all phones that were near Nancy's home and found one that went to suspicious locations? What does the Day 30 timing tell us about the pace of the investigation and where it stands? We value thoughtful analysis and discussion in our comment section. The case continues. Nancy remains missing. Her family continues to wait for answers, and investigators continue working every available angle, using every available technology and technique to find Nancy and to identify and bring to justice whoever took her from her home on February 1st. The Day 30 desert search represents one component of that effort. Cell tower coordinates pointed to a location. Investigators searched it, and regardless of what that search found or did not find, the investigation continues forward, driven by evidence and by determination to solve this case. Nancy Guthrie deserves to be found. Savannah and her siblings deserve to know what happened to their mother. The 84-year-old woman who was taken from her home in the middle of the night deserves justice. And the coordinated efforts of hundreds of investigators using forensic science, digital forensics, behavioral analysis, technological tracking, traditional detective work, and systematic searching will continue until those answers are achieved and justice is served. True Crime Vault will be here documenting and explaining every step until this case reaches resolution.